Hi, everybody. My name's Aaron. I'm the tech director here at Matthias, and this is going to be our ML Tech in-ear training part 1. I'm here with some pretty cool dudes, good friends of mine. This is Logan. Say hi to people, Logan.
Hello, my name's Logan. I've been playing the worship band here for a little bit, and glad to help out.
Yeah, you also had some music tech experience as well, right?
Yeah, I studied music technology for 3 or 4 years for a little bit. I've been playing music for a very long time, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Cool shirt, too. Manchester Orchestra. We love them. Sir, we haven't met before. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Brad Baker. I am the worship music director here at Matthias. Been on staff for 3 years. And yeah, that's who I am.
Cool. Great to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. So today what we're going to do is we're basically just going to go over some basic audio stuff that's going to help you begin to get a better understanding of what goes into in-ear mixing. So this is, again, like I said, part 1 of 2. Part 2 is going to be much more intensive, like actually get to hear us build an in-ear mix. Kind of the purpose of why we're here, Logan and I were chatting about it the other day, just in preparation for this, is that we've grown a lot over the past year, like hugely. So there's a lot of ways that we want to continue to equip and train people so that everybody can continue to grow together as the ministry continues to grow. And we honestly want to instill confidence. We want to instill confidence in our band members specifically, so that what they're hearing in their ears is what's translating into the house and the broadcast. And for our tech folks, we want to instill confidence to know that everybody's kind of on the same team, working towards the same goal. So with that said, we'll get started here. I'll run a little screen recording of my screen here. Just handy dandy TV so that the people can see hi to people. So this is a computer representation of our front of house console. So you can see right here is my microphone. And then this is Logan's microphone, and this is Brad's, even though that says Amanda.
Check 1.
Hi, Amanda.
Okay. Hi.
So basically, want to start with this section right here. It's what we call gain staging. So basically, when you're speaking into a microphone or playing an instrument or whatever, this microphone right here is taking my voice and converting sound levels into electrical energy. And the preamp at the board takes that energy and amplifies it so it can come through some pretty cool speakers or some pretty sweet headphones, whatever you got. But that's actually what sound check is for. So I've heard a lot of, like, at the very beginning before sound check, like, oh, my ears sound super weird. And that's actually because we haven't done what we need to do to get your ears started correctly. Because like we will EQ stuff and make everybody sound better, but the actual goal of sound check is to get your level up to a good spot. Just because there's what's called a noise floor on every microphone. So what that means is if Micah went back and turned me down really low right now, you would hear a hiss that is like just around where my voice is, and that's going to sound really bad when you turn it up. So I hear anyway. And so you want to, if you look right here, this mic's a little special, so it's not quite where we need it, but you're aiming for around this area. Brad, talk really loudly into your mic.
Hi.
Yeah, you see that little orange spot right there?
In-ear training 2021.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. That spot's actually a really solid level. You need to talk like that for the remainder of the time, just so you know.
Noted.
Yeah, so that's a pretty solid level where you have enough signal that everybody in your ears can just turn things up, but you're not clipping. We really want to, I know vocalists especially will like take things easy and like just getting warmed up and getting started, but it's important for, like maybe 20 seconds to give whoever's running sound like your best signal, because we're making decisions to say, okay, this person's giving me this level, so this is how loud they're gonna be. So it can create problems whenever, you just come on like, oh, hi, my name is Aaron, and this is my sound check. And so then when you actually sing really loudly, it's going to be a bad time for everyone who just turns you up really loud in their ears. So that's super important, just so that that's your starter baseline. Like if we're not starting at a good place, then everything's going to go downhill from there. Logan, you have anything else to add preamp wise? You forgot you had a microphone for a second there.
I did. This other thing in my hand. No, I feel like you explained that pretty well.
Sweet. Logan has nothing. So I'm actually going to switch pages here. So there's actual gain staging for each of your in-ears. So you're going to see the band comp for this week. So we got Brad right here, Ashley, Amanda, whoever okay is.
That would be me. That would be me.
So this is like what sends signal to your packs. So gain staging actually happens in your pack as well. So what happens if you've got like bad gain staging on your pack is you've got your pack up really high and your faders on your iPad really low, which creates like the super airy, hissy sound that you're going to hear a lot. Now, some of that can be RF interference, but usually that's going to like sound like a radio, like searching for a station somewhere, versus if it's just really noisy and airy, that's because your pack is probably not up loud enough and your faders are too low. So you're going to want to start pack like right in the middle. It's a good spot it's going to protect your hearing for one, because if you start really loud, that's not great for your ears. But you also don't want to compensate and mix things too loudly, because Ashley, you know the distorted mix very, very well. So you want to kind of fit the middle so that you have room to either turn up or turn down based on what we're working with here. I kind of want to come back to you. I just wonder if you have any. You're looking at me like you have something to say, but I don't know.
I'm just listening very intently.
Good to know. I think final thing on that is that, so if you're mixing your ears and your pack is at about middle, and let's say you're a vocalist and you're singing and you've got your fader like all the way up and you don't have enough, it is completely okay to ask whoever's running sound for more, because there's a way we can do that to give you more without, what are you doing?
I have a question.
Hi, Brad. What's your question?
Do you want to do your gain staging in your in-ear monitors after the gain staging in the sound check?
Great question. It kind of happens at the same time. So as you're like, it's kind of what you'll hear, like when I'm like, all right, guitar players play. And like tonight when Logan plays, because his gear is different from like Will Conger's, who has a lot higher output, he's going to start really quiet. So as you're going to hear me adjust his gain to make him louder, and you at the same time can kind of adjust, like once you figure out if I've hit my peak level, that's when you can kind of figure out where you want him to be. But that's why you start at the middle, because if your pack's cranked all the way up and you turn Logan up at the very beginning because he's super quiet, that's going to damage your ears pretty bad when I actually get it where it needs to be. So that's a great question. Great question. Logan.
So something I might just throw to you.
Yeah.
So I feel like often whenever I feel like, like my mix in my ears is just getting pretty distorted, pretty muddy, pretty hard to hear. Something I'll do often is go to my individual channel mixes, bring everything down, and then if I need to, I can turn my pack up. Mm-hmm. Is that generally best practice? Actually
the definition of gain staging. So that's perfect.
Great. That was great.
Yeah, that was great. I think we can wrap it up from there, actually. Time
for dinner.
Yeah, I'm hungry. I actually have this. Yeah, this is looking really good right about now. So from here, there's two main things I want to go over. And they are really specific to vocalists, but will also apply just holistically, but there's just a lot of like real life examples with vocalists that I've dealt with in the past month or so. So the first thing we're going to go over is a gate. Right here, this is what a gate is. So it's like if you picture sound starting up here, running all the way down, hits the fader out through the speakers. So the gate is like the second thing right after your preamp. So this is the gate that Josiah put on me earlier. So basically, what a gate does is that it can remove unwanted stage noise or drum bleed. Like it's really, really big on a snare mic because your hi-hat's so close. And so if your snare mic is just wide open and you're playing your hi-hat, you're getting a ton of like really bad sounding hi-hat through your snare, which is no fun for anyone. It's also really, really awesome on vocals because especially given that, we're like, our drum set is 5-7 feet away from our vocal mics. If it's in an instrumental part, you're gonna have a lot of cymbals, especially just running through your vocal mic, which can create feedback, which is that fun, Micah? Is that fun for you? You sure? Okay, cool, good to know.
He's shaking his head no.
He's shaking, yeah, for the people who can't see, the many, many people here, Micah's in the back shaking his head no. So basically, the way that this is gonna affect where your ears sound is specifically for vocalists and drummers. Drummers are actually gonna be able to hear the gate in their ears. I run a different gate that is post your ears for vocalists. But for drummers, you're gonna hear like when you hit a snare drum, and then if you're just like barely playing it, you're probably not gonna hear your snare drum very well unless you're hearing it through the overheads. So most of the time, I haven't run into a drummer that doesn't like playing loud. I feel like that's pretty accurate, right? Yeah. Right. Danny, maybe? Danny?
Danny? Playing quiet?
Yeah. Hi, Danny. So most of the time, drummers aren't going to be able to hear that. But if we can set a gate wrong. So if you're like feeling like as soon as you hit your snare drum goes away, like you can't hear the ring, it's likely that a gate is just set a little too aggressively. So it's good to just have a dialogue with your sound guy, like, hey, can you back this off a little bit? This is just what I'm hearing. But for vocalists, what's really important, so you're not hearing it in your ears, but if it's like we had an acoustic week here last week, and it was really, really apparent because when the whole band is in, all of the violins are in, it's higher register parts, so it's really good to sing out. But then when the band would come down, as Brad did a really awesome job of shaping things dynamically, but as everything came down, the vocals would kind of come to a whisper too. And the issue with that being is that in your ears, you can't really tell where you're at. Like if you've got yourself all the way up, your lowest volume is still gonna sound pretty loud. The issue is that from my perspective, it's like barely getting over the gate. So an example of that would be, I'm just gonna use a pretty extreme example here on this gate on my mic. So this is my normal talking level, and I'm just gonna raise this, and like it's taking all my signal away, or it can happen like this sometimes where you just barely get over it. Funny story, when I was first learning how to use a gate, I had a gate on a vocalist, and I set it way too high, and their mic started like, and I thought their mic was dying, so then I brought them another mic. Same problem, because it was my fault. I was embarrassed. But I'll never set a gate wrong again, though. So the issue with that is, I'm actually going to turn my gate off. So the issue with that, and why it's good, especially for a vocalist, to have a dialogue with whoever's running sound, both at broadcast and at front of house, is because in your ears, you're probably not going to hear that. You're definitely not going to hear that because the effects run on the vocals are post your in-ears. But it's a really big deal because if you're whoever's running sound is like, hey, can you bring it a little more here? We're not necessarily asking to be more or less musical. We want you to be heard, and it's not running. You're not singing loud enough to cut through. Does that make sense to everybody? Anything to add?
Thought that was a good example with the what you just did with your voice.
Sweet.
Very helpful.
Sweet.
So I was going to bring up as well that it would be helpful for us to be able to ask, like as tech folks, like, hey, you're not clearing the gate all the way, and that gate may be in a good spot, if it is right in front of the drums or something else with a lot of other noise. if we can ask like, hey, just give us like a little bit more on this section, maybe a quieter section. You may feel like you're singing too loud, but what we're hearing out in the house is going to be different from what you're hearing in your ears.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because of just, again, how close our drums are. But even being at other places, stage noise is not uncommon. Like usually the only place you're going to have like true, like a solid stage is at, your really expensive PA installs. And like they're pretty crazy. Like when they install these new PAs, like you're standing behind the PA and you can't hear anything. Like your stage is super quiet. But most of the places that you're going to sing or play is going to have a similar problem. So it's important to just realize like this depth control here just tells you how much we're cutting. So that is a really, really low number. Like it's the difference between if I turn this on and my depth is only 2.2 and I raise it. You can still hear me a little bit, even though you can see that red thing's still working, versus a depth of 40. Most of the time, we're running our gates at like 10 max. So it's not set like as a hard mute, where as soon as you stop singing or stop playing, it's gone. It's really, really forgiving. So if a tech is like, hey, can you get over the gate? It's more than likely because the cymbals are just really loud and we're trying to not give people a face full of cymbals. You're gonna see another graph here that looks really similar. It just does a couple different things. This is a compressor. You do a great job of explaining compression, like a really good job. You wanna give it a shot?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give that a shot here.
Yeah.
So the way I usually like to explain compression is imagining your audio signal having a ceiling and a floor. So essentially what the compression does is it brings the ceiling down a little bit, and then it brings all of that up together with makeup gain up more, right? So it controls the highest peaks of whatever your audio signal is, and then since it's bringing down level at the first part of its process, we're going to make that up by bringing everything up together then. And it kind of just controls, like if there's, like a snare drum that just really pops the right way and it's like way too loud, but everything else is generally fine. It's going to kind of tighten that up so that, the amount of difference between the lowest points and the highest points are a lot easier to control.
Yep, that's a really good example. In the studio world, people will call a compressor like a glue to the mix. Like you've got your mix and putting a compressor on it just kind of glues everything together a little bit. I'll just throw another. Most of these controls, don't worry about. But here's just an example of what a compressor would be on myself. So right now, this is that threshold that Logan was talking about, where it's like at this point, this is where the compressor will start to work. So I bring it down, you're gonna see well, you might see it, we'll see. Check. I might not be loud enough. Logan, let's do it on your mic. Mine doesn't like to work here. Right. Let's do it here.
I am checking my microphone. Ooh. Am I hitting the compressor? We'll see. Out. All right, check. Am I hitting it? There we go.
So this red area is basically where it's saying it's above a certain threshold, and so it's bringing his level down. So keep talking, Logan.
All right, I am talking into the compressor. We're seeing what it does. So
this
I'm currently
like
getting quieter.
Super extreme version of what compression does.
Yeah, we are squashing my voice.
Very true.
As it's referred to as.
Yep.
The compressor's loosening up a little bit. And I can keep checking the microphone here.
You're talking at your normal level here. Maybe get a little more excited.
All right, and so now we're getting really excited for the 2021 in-ear monitor testing.
Versus if that compressor's off, let's do the same thing. So start normal level.
And now I'm doing the exact same thing that I did before, and you may notice it's a little bit louder.
A little bit. I should have, during sound check, I had Brad just yell into his mic, and I probably should have had Brad do the wide range. But essentially, like if you're using a compressor correctly, and correctly is kind of relative depending on what you're using it for, it's going to take you kind of view it vertically, right? Like top and bottom. I kind of view it as like quiet and loud. Both of them are right. It's just a different way of explaining it. And a compressor is going to take a wide dynamic level and go from here to here. So it's not like this is really not musical and sounds terrible. This is just a more, it's a range that works better so that if a vocalist is in a quiet part, and I promise I'm not picking on vocalists are just good examples for everything. So if a vocalist is in a really quieter part with a lower register, I don't have to throw their fader up 10 dB for them to be heard, because I can have them up pretty loud, but then when they go loud, I know that their compressor is going to catch them so that they're not, here now in the mix. Compression gets done on everything. Most of what you hear in your ears, you're not going to hear that. The only time you're going to hear compression are on the purple channels that we've been using the past couple weeks, which are processed in waves, which has a bunch of compressors in it. But all of your standard channels, like here's Ashley's channel for tonight, you're not going to hear any compression on you. So the question being then, okay, if I can't hear it, how does it affect how I sound still? And basically, what we're trying to avoid as tech people is we don't want to overcompress. We don't want to take this and make it this, because when that happens, it sounds really thin, really boxy, and it's not pleasing. Like if I overcompress Logan's guitar tonight, he's going to be really thin, and quite frankly, it's just not going to sound very good, which would be a bummer. Big bummer, because you have good tone.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that to not happen.
Yep.
So.
So a good way to think about this is that as you're, whether you're playing an instrument or singing, you want to make sure that your lows aren't too low. Highs are kind of relative. Like highs we can kind of always bring back, but it's really the low portion where you're, it's like a really intimate, quiet moment. But if you're whispering into your mic, then I got to turn you way up. And then when I get loud again, I'm now blowing everyone's ears out, and your sound tech is frustrated and then is going to compress everyone like this, which is not good. It kind of gets used on everything in a different way, and it basically just helps us control everyone's dynamic range. Fellas, anything to add there?
I'm trying to think of just the main difference between a gate and compression.
Yeah.
Like somebody who would hear these back to back and think, oh, it kind of sounds like the same thing. What's the main difference between them?
Yeah. So a gate, it looks like the same graph actually. So both looking very similar, but essentially what you're doing is that a compressor, like if my signal starts here and ends here, and I set my compressor to be right here, it's whatever is beyond this signal, it's just going to start bringing these things closer together, versus a gate affects when there's not signal coming through. So when a signal goes below a certain point, it turns it down. So it's not necessarily, a compressor doesn't really turn things down like a gate does, unless you're using it really poorly. A compressor is just I think it's more helpful to think of compression as glue, and a gate as like a mute switch. A gate would, again, never be set like that, but it's probably more helpful to think of it that way, because whenever you're below, this is my normal singing point, and when I get below here, mute, or at least brought down a significant amount, versus compression is not bringing things down to a certain level, it's bringing things together.
Cool, that's good.
Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. I think a big thing to think about as the next one of these we're actually going to have some multi-tracks from a rehearsal, and we're just going to kind of build a mix from scratch, which will be awesome. But we've got a couple just kind of starter tips, just so that this all doesn't feel like a bunch of knowledge that you don't know what to do anything with. So a couple things. Lastly, it's an in-ear tip, but it relates specifically to compression. The best way that you can kind of tell where your dynamic level is don't turn yourself up all the way in quiet moments. A couple weeks ago, Brad and I are mixing ears, and we discovered, again, another really, really good vocalist example. So a vocalist was leading a song, and so we were like, okay, this person's got like a good level where they're leading, but then on another song that Brad was leading, and this person was singing harmony, their level just dropped. And we were like, well, that's kind of weird. They were just up super loud. And so it's really important that in that person's ears, they probably weren't aware that that was happening, because in ears, like the point is so that you're isolated, but they also, if you don't have a full mix of everybody, which we're definitely going to get to, it gives you a really false perception of where your dynamics actually are. So you can sound, keys is another great example. Like in lower moments, let's say Mark hops up here to pray, and we're just padding under him. Keys are super, super loud in our ears, like loudest possible thing, even when we're playing quietly. That doesn't actually help dynamics, because we're playing super quiet and we think we're loud, but out here in our broadcast, we're like, I don't have any, where'd my keys go? So it's important to, like, you want to hear yourself, and you definitely want to hear yourself above everybody else. But if you're not bringing the rest of the band with you when you turn yourself up, you're kind of do yourself a disservice. I was trying to think what the opposite of favor was, but I had nothing. You got anything?
Disfavor?
Yeah. I don't think that's a word, but it is now.
It's a word today.
So just a couple guidelines. Again, pack it the middle to start. That's going to give you a really good starting point. A good mix, and this is kind of used objectively, because everyone has their preferences. Like all three of us probably mix our ears a little bit differently. Going back through, Brad and Josiah kind of make fun of my in-ear mix because I have my vocals panned like off a cliff left and right, and he's not going to mix his vocals like that. At least I hope not. That would be weird. But in general, everybody should have a full mix. And what I mean by a full mix is that each band member should be represented there somehow. Depending on what instrument you're playing or whether you're singing or not, those things change. Like you might not need much of an electric if you're a vocalist, because that's going to that frequency range is going to step on where you sing, so you're not going to be able to hear yourself well. But if you can't hear an electric at all, that's a problem. Drums are another thing. Drums, and I've learned, I think Micah and I have learned this a lot, mixing broadcast. Drums carry every bit of the energy. So Lindsay, you have way more power than you think. Maybe you know. Do you know? Yeah, drummers always know. I'm thinking of Rob right now because Rob definitely always knows. So because there's so much energy in the drums, if you don't have any drums in your ears, it's hard to be with the band, whether it's in a low moment or a high moment, because of how much drums do dynamically. So especially, even if you're just throwing your overheads up a little bit, that's going to give you way more energy. That's going to give you a feel dynamically of where the band is going, much more than if you're just relying on, any kind of excess drum noise that comes through your vocal mic or something like that. Bass is a big one. We've seen this a lot. It seems like a lot of people are afraid of their bass, except for bass players.
Bass is my favorite thing.
It really is my favorite thing.
Fills it.
Do you like? Well, you're a bass player too, so you can.
Logan plays everything.
He does.
And the curse of bass players, you're usually only noticed whenever something's wrong.
Well, not in this room. Not in this room, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
So a bass, I think, is I tried to figure out a good way to put words to what I'm hearing a lot of times when the bass is full versus not. Your mix is going to feel very, very thin if you don't have at least a little bit of bass in there, just because of how much a bass can take or give in a mix. The first thing I'm thinking when I'm listening to a band play is if the bass player is out of pocket, that's the first thing you can tell. Because the way that a bass player blends with a drum kit, the way that a bass player blends with the lower mids of a keyboard, those things are super awesome, when they're done well and people don't really notice it, but you immediately notice it if it's off. So bringing at least some bass into your mix, like it doesn't have to be crazy loud. Most people, I would suggest, use the purple channel for bass, but just because there's a lot of compression on that channel, so your bass is going to be very, very, very consistent. For bass players, I would blend it in between the two, just so you can still hear some dynamics of what you're doing. But like, please add bass to your ears. Like, please. It'll change your life, I promise. I'm probably going to say that a lot here in the next couple of minutes, but that's okay.
So it made me think of a question here. Are there like a few key things that you would always want in relation to panning?
Yes.
Stuff left and right.
Yes.
So bass is one of those things you would want center as well as the kick drum, snare. Anything else?
Skipped ahead in my notes here. That was
I'm
good.
sorry.
You didn't know about my notes either, so that's really good. So panning, there's a couple things that you're always going to want center. Bass is definitely one of those. The reason being is that because a bass is so fundamental to a mix, if it's panned far right, like your ears are going to feel weird. Like the way your ears process bass energy, like this, like if I have my bass panned to my right ear, this ear is going to be really full, but probably get fatigued a lot faster than this ear is because there's no bass in it, which is going to make your whole in-ear mix feel weird if one ear is more fatigued than the other. So definitely keep your bass in the middle. Same with kick. Kick kind of exists in the same frequency range. Snare is good in the middle as well. The only time I would pan a snare at all is if one overhead is picking up the snare drum a little more than the other.
Two drummers.
I feel like I would still want both snares in the middle. Maybe not. We'll when we have two drums in a couple weeks, we'll figure it out. Yeah, the drum set's actually going to be right here, and Mark's going to preach on top of it. That's probably the only thing.
Cue the laughter noise.
Yeah. Can we put that in post? Josiah, can we put that in post? He's not going to answer me. Okay, that's fine. That's the only thing I'd keep panned in the middle. So there is this weird phenomenon in audio when you have, so it exists a lot with overheads or electric guitars that are in stereo. It's called the phantom center. Anytime I say phantom, I think of Scooby-Doo for some reason. But the phantom center is essentially, you have two sides of the same content panned left and right, and so your brain receives that knowledge and thinks it's directly in the middle. See, phantom. But so like for an electric guitar, if you want your electric guitar to sound full like in both ears versus like a mono straight down the middle, panning them left and right is going to make that feel in the middle, but isn't going to be super, super forward. That's kind of up to preference, but something I would always pan hard left and hard right is drum overheads, just because of how much energy those bring. It gives you the point of overhead mics is to give a good stereo picture of the drum set, as if you had no close mics. Like back in the day when the Beatles were using 3 or 4 total mics on a drum kit. That's the whole point of an overhead, is so that you get a good stereo picture. So when my drummer comes to tom 1, it's a little bit on my left. When it's tom 2, a little on my right. Tom 3, even more on my right. That's going to make your whole mix feel like you're going to feel like it's in stereo versus in mono, straight down the middle. Everything's stacked on top of each other. I think that's panning-wise, everything that I thought of. That was good. How do you typically pan things, Brad?
The bass in the middle, kick in the middle. I'll usually, whoever's on either side of me, like vocally, I won't put them hard right or left, but I'll kind of put them.
That's my thing.
A little bit. So if Ashley's to my right, or Joy, I pan them a little bit to the right. Same with keys if it's on my right. I rarely do like hard panning.
Yep.
I put my whatever instrument I'm playing in the middle. So if I'm playing acoustic or keys, I'll put that in the middle.
Yeah. What about you, Logan?
So a lot of the same stuff that Brad's doing and that you're doing. Definitely kind of like to if there's not a reason for something to be dead center, I like to move it off to the side because it's fighting for my attention less. So if I'm if I'm not singing that week, I don't necessarily need to hear the vocals as strong. I may move them, like you were saying, slightly off so that, if I'm playing electric that week and I really need to be able to hear the other guitar player, then the guitars will be more center and will have less things that are fighting for my attention. Kind of a little phrase I like to throw on there is I'm essentially building my stage. Now that we don't have amps and we don't have PA speakers and everything on the stage, I'm kind of building building a stage for what I'm hearing, so that what I need to hear most is going to be center and the things that are not unimportant but less so.
Yep.
Are slightly out of the way where they're still there. But
yeah, you bring up a good point of importance, because depending on what you're doing, things become not less important, as in like they're still a part of the band and a part of the mix, but as far as your in-ear mix is concerned, so drums, guitars probably aren't as important, or keys might not be as important as the click. Click is probably the click, and whoever's leading a song is probably the most important. But then your bass, and then kind of learning to blend in the other things. That's kind of how I approach any in-ear mix. It's like, okay, I'm going to bring in my really important stuff. So I'm bringing in my drums, my bass, click, myself. Now let's kind of bring everybody else in. For vocals, pitch reference is obviously a super big thing, which is what I said for when you're mixing a pack for a vocalist. Guitars still matter, like you still tuck them somewhere, but the guitars most of the time aren't going to be, at least electric guitars aren't going to be giving a vocalist a pitch reference as much as an acoustic guitar or keys is going to be. I wouldn't even do pad if you're at a place that has a pad. We do here, because that pad can sometimes be modulated, and so it'll give you a false perception of what the pitch is.
Yeah, I think panning is probably is like the biggest thing that initially can help me, because like I'm not controlling the compression or the gate like I am like in the way that I'm checking or like playing.
Yep.
But like as far as like what I can do right now in the moment to help my ears, panning is way more important than you think it would be.
Yep.
Because like Logan was saying, like if everything's in the middle, it's gonna be a hot mess. Like you're not gonna be able to distinguish anything very well. But when it's amazing when you like pan things, how everything opens up and it's clearer. Yep. So I would say like that's one thing that you're able to control. That's like at your fingertips, if that makes sense. Right. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Even to speak a little more to what Logan said, I'm like the extreme example of what panning looks like, because when I play, the only thing that's in the middle is kick, snare, bass, click, and myself. Like Brad, if I'm on stage and I've got one vocalist over here and Brad to my right, Brad is only in my right ear. Like if I took my right ear out, I can't hear Brad. That's just how I've always mixed ears. It's like an extreme version of like, all right, what do I really need to play well? And literally get everything else out of the way of the middle, because it just helps you hear better and really focus in specifically on what you're working through. Okay, here's a big one. The 1 ear out versus 2 ears in. This is a big deal. I'm looking at Brad specifically because he used to take 1 ear out all the time and he doesn't anymore. Praise the Lord. So
I'll take it out very, very rarely.
Oh no.
Yeah, whenever,
if it's like
whenever
at the end
you
of a
feel in the
song,
moment.
And like I want to hear, which is why you have crowd mics, but it's usually at the end of a song when there's not anybody playing. But
so
yes.
Here's the deal on the 1 ear out thing. Here's the deal.
It's a lot better with 2.
So the issue with 1 ear out, for one, That wasn't a pun, but it kind of turned out being a pun. So if I was playing Sunday and I took an ear out. If you're taking an ear out, I hope there's something wrong. Like that's the only reason you should take an ear out, in my opinion, ever, is because your ears are literally breaking or something. The reason being, one, just for your hearing protection. So if you're on a loud stage and you take an ear out, you now are introducing two different variables to your ears. So in this ear, you've got in-ears on, especially if you have custom molds, which is like directly on your eardrum. You have that in one ear, and in your other ear, you're hearing a loud stage. So what that does, Josiah and I were watching a lot of MXU videos, so we can't even take credit for some of this because the guys at MXU really taught us a lot about this. If I've got an ear in and I'm hearing the stage, everything in this ear now sounds really quiet compared to the stage. So what I'm going to do is I just need way, way more up in here, which is super, super dangerous to your ears. And can just do like a lot of long-term damage, which is the exact opposite of what in-ears are supposed to do. In-ears versus, old school wedges, like you're on a loud stage and that wedge is cranked so you can hear yourself. And that's not great for your ears. So the whole point of getting in-ears in the first place is like, all right, it probably doesn't have to be as loud, and it's more isolated. So if you take one out, that's going to damage your hearing more than likely over time. It is especially big for vocalists specifically. I know a lot of people will take an ear out. It's like, I hear myself better, or like you said, want to hear the crowd, the audience, whatever. So the issue, especially when you're singing, is that as soon as you take an ear out, I promise you're going to go flat. And the reason being is that, so if you're, standing right here where Brad's going to be tonight, he takes an ear out, what he's going to hear through the PA is his voice go that way, bounce off the wall, and come back to him. These speakers don't shoot that way for a reason. So they're shooting back and then coming back to him. By the time it gets back to his ear, that has decayed, so the pitch is literally changing. So he's trying to change his pitch to a pitch that is changing. So what that means is that you're going to see vocalists go flat a lot when they take their ear out because their pitch reference is wrong now, which is obviously a big deal, and nobody wants to be flat and not know it. So most of the time I've had a couple instances where I've seen, whether an ear fell out or somebody just took an ear out, and I could tell they were flat, and I was like, hey, can you put your ear back in? And problem solved. So like scientifically speaking, big reason not to, especially if you're singing. But I understand why vocalists would, because if your in-ear mix sucks, it feels like you're in a box and you can't hear yourself. So good ways to combat that so that you can keep ears in. Crowd mics for sure. You want to be careful that they're at a good volume where they're not super muddy and just kind of like dirtying everything up. But at the same time, reverb in your ears is going to make it feel a lot like it, less it's just right here. It makes it, what your ears are missing when you're putting in in-ears, there's the ambient noise of the room, which is why most people take an ear out in the first place. And reverb or crowd mics kind of like fake your brain into thinking you're still hearing things in the room, even though it's very isolated. It can also affect vertigo if you do it long term. So like a lot of the stuff right here affects more than just your hearing. So if I just play like a month with just my right ear in, I'm going to start to get kind of dizzy eventually because it will literally affect your vertigo because of different pressure in your ears. No, don't take your ear out. Don't do it.
It's a good song by you too.
Yeah. Anything else to add? What was helpful for you to kind of like go from always taking one out to shifting towards using both consistently?
I have never really thought about it before. I think it's just getting a better mix because when I first started playing music in public, like worship gathering, or just apart from that, like playing a show, I didn't have in-ears. I had the wedges, so like I was playing off of that and used to that for years. So I think that's a big reason why I even started doing it, because I was so acclimated to just listening to what's happening in the room. And I didn't know how to mix my ears at all. The first time I started using in-ears was when I started serving here. And we didn't have our own in-ear mix to even mess with, so I never even touched it, which is a big reason probably. So, I mean, when I figured out how to make a decent mix in my ears and have just a more full sound, then I start putting both in. And honestly, to be able to hear everything, because I can't hear everything if I only have one ear in. Like if I'm leading a set and I'm leading a band, I need to be able to hear everything, and one ear is not going to accomplish that for me.
Yep. What about you? Did you start on wedges too?
I've used both pretty frequently, so I'm relatively familiar. I think the first time I've used in-ear monitors was the AVM. And you had your
classic
own
blue
little
box.
You had your own little controller there, so that was very high tech at the time. Now we got iPads and everything. But yeah, I would definitely agree. The only time to take an ear out is if something went wrong. There was, one week I was playing drums and my ears just cut out for the first song, and I kept checking every chance I got, and they were just not there. So I was just kind of just going for it. And but yeah, I think definitely like applying, if you can apply like a few of these things that we've been talking about. I really like how you pointed out that it's best to get your the things that are going to be most important for you to hear. If you get those at a good volume and then kind of build everything else in, and like making sure to not it's it could be very easy to have all of your individual gain settings way too high, and at that point you're going to be clipping into your pack. It's a lot easier to turn your pack up if the overall mix is too quiet. So if you have everything at a decent volume where you can hear it, and if you need a little extra for that big that big part of the song where you want to be able to hear. I think I caught the gate there a little bit. But yeah,
Learning.
So you can always give your pack a little bit of boost. But if everything is too loud whenever you're mixing on your iPad, that's a lot of time to go through and bring every single channel down.
Yeah. I think that's everything that I had planned for. Questions from the peoples.
Lindsay, in the baseball t-shirt.
Sure. Somebody had told me recently that our pads are like set to defaulting. So whenever I log on, it like resets itself. How do you?
Can they hear the question? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, keep going.
How do you what would you encourage like other churches in that realm? Like where to set that default for
Right.
people? And then also like when your instrumentalists get up to their thing, like I don't know a thing about any of this. This is my first time like learning any of it. What would you encourage to someone who's like a little clueless?
Yep.
How much should I like adjust those things from what you have set?
Yep.
as default?
A lot. You should adjust them a lot. So the. Yeah. Go ahead. You want to? You rephrase the question. You rephrase the question. You're a Ryan Seacrest type. Come on, bro.
So the question Lindsay just asked was, assuming that all your levels when you start at the night are kind of at a default, how much should we differ from what we have set initially?
Yeah. So the default is by no means like a set and forget kind of thing. Essentially, the way I went and set them up was, okay, this pack is usually used for this kind of instrumentalist. So like for Brad's pack, most of the time Brad is playing acoustic and he's singing. So I bump his acoustic and vocal up a little more. But like tonight, he's also playing keys. So if he didn't touch anything, he's not going to be able to hear his keys as well as his acoustic. What also is going to affect that is that each tech person kind of runs their gain staging a little bit differently. Now, in theory, you would want it like as close as it possibly could be, but everyone has their different style of doing things. So how a person sets their gain structure can actually affect whether that default, like whether Brad's voice is actually loud enough or not. So if you didn't touch it, obviously that would be a big deal. I think there was a second part of your question where you were just saying how would other churches set that?
Yeah, like what would you encourage other churches that are looking at like trying to get a default set?
Yeah. I think you just have to, if you have a process of like, Pack 2 here is almost always the vocalist without an instrument. So what that's going to mean is that their keys need to be high because they're a vocalist. They need pitch reference. Their voice needs to be high, obviously, and then their click needs to be high. So everywhere else, you can just kind of like, I got super OCD and made sure that everyone's drums are at -20 precisely. You don't have to do that unless you're just super OCD like me. But if you're like, you just want to set like wherever your pack is going to be, try to get it close enough. Or if you're investing some more money into it, invest into a system where you can save mixes. That's like the coolest part, is when you can see a band comp and be like, oh, Brad's playing this week, let me load his mix, which is awesome. So yeah, great question. Does that make sense? Cool. Any others?
Any other questions out there?
Micah's looking at me like he's got a question. Tell better stories, bro. He's wearing a Tell Better Stories sweatshirt. Yeah. I feel like we're solid then.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Yeah. Just a little encouragement. Learning a lot of info, especially tech info, is a lot like drinking from a fire hose. So it's sweet that this is a video resource, so you can go watch it a lot. Feel free to ask any questions, because like we said at the beginning, especially from a tech perspective, like we want to instill confidence in band members and even our team. So the more dialogue we're having, like, hey, am I singing, like just to be asked, hey, am I singing loud enough over the gate, for us is like, oh, that's awesome. Like, thanks for asking that. Yeah, you're great. So
Yeah, I think, a big part is learning the jargon.
Yeah. It's
like knowing what a gate is, knowing what compression is, and then being able to communicate that with whoever's running sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to be a great thing for you to learn and like identify. Because when you're not able to communicate it, then it's like, how do we better your mix? How do we better what's happening? So learning the jargon.
Yeah, and it's skills you'll take anywhere, like beyond this building.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it's super awesome as like walking in on a Sunday from a musician side of thing, and knowing the problems I'm having in my ears, but knowing the right language to tell the tech person there, so that we don't spend 20 minutes trying to get on the same page. It's going to save you a lot of time and make everybody's job better. So I think we're good.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for hanging out up here with me, fellas. Thanks for wearing a super cool Manchester shirt too.
And we got the Dungeons and Dragons
D&D
shirt over here too.
Yeah.
Aaron didn't say anything about that
Matthias
one.
Lot Worship, sponsored by Dungeons and Dragons, every Friday at 5 p.m. at Brad's house.
I want to cut that out.
All right, we're out. Dunzo. Well done, everybody.
Dunzo.
Well done.
Yeah.
Wow, that was crazy.